Hello, I am Anime Brawler and I have read Vinland Saga before, so let's just compare the adaptation to the source material in terms of differences, because the first season had some anime original content, so I figured that season 2 would do the same thing, so I prepared in advance for this video. But before we jump right into it, make sure to subscribe at the end of this video, because I'll be making more Vinland Saga content in the future, so stay tuned. First episode, which was a great episode by the way, had Einar's backstory, which in actuality is filler, or I guess the better word to it would be anime original content, because calling it just filler would be a disservice to what the studio was able to come up with. Yes, Einar's origin story is canon in the manga, but we only get to see his family in just one panel. They didn't even have names, they look different in the manga too. His mom looks much older than she is in the anime, and his sister has different hairstyle, which doesn't really change much, since they didn't really get any screen time anyway, but also his sister was killed in the anime, where we can see that in the manga she was taken away as a slave probably, and his mom in the anime caught an arrow in her shoulder. Meanwhile in the manga there is no arrow to be seen. This is the only real change from Einar's origin story. Later on, this episode had slight changes. One of the slave buyers in the manga slipped his hand into Einar's pants and also touched and played with his nipples, whereas in the anime he just talks and looks at him with very gauge intentions. The scenes where Einar tries to escape slavery were extended in the anime as well. What was one chapter in the manga was an entire episode in the anime. Yes, this one episode was just a really well dragged out single chapter, and you can see all the love and care that the studio is putting into it. It had a bunch of nice and neat monologues and even dialogues that were exchanged when Kettle is buying Einar as a slave that weren't in the manga either. Overall, this was a great first episode. There is nothing much new or different in episodes 2 and 3. I guess the only difference is the trees were facing different way towards the river, but like who cares? Kids were fooling around much more in the anime in episode 2, and the whole farm felt much more alive in the anime. They also changed the order of events towards the end of episode 2, but that doesn't really change or disrupt anything. There was also this one little scene in episode 2, where parents of the young master's girlfriend were spying on them, just doing some eavesdropping while they were having a private business meeting, if you know what I mean. In the manga, they were using hand signals to communicate with each other so they wouldn't be hurt. Meanwhile, in the anime, they were actually talking. I personally thought that it was much funnier in the manga, but it's like whatever. Not like the anime is gonna have to get cancelled because of something like this, right? Literally nothing different or new in episode 3. This episode was nearly one-to-one from manga to anime basically. In the 4th episode, when Snake attempted to strike Thorfinn, in the anime he saw an image of Snake as Askeladd. In the manga he doesn't see this image in Snake, and when he jumps away, in the manga he has an inner monologue that said that Snake is just as good as Askeladd, maybe even faster on strike. He doesn't have this monologue in the anime, and if you are an anime only and a bit confused about this, there's no actual correlation between Snake and Askeladd other than Snake being just as fast or even faster than Askeladd on strike. The second half of this episode pretty much followed what happened in the manga, but it played out completely differently in the anime. In the manga, after Thorfinn's and Einar's conversation, Einar was really pissed about Thorfinn being a warrior that has killed way too many people to count, as he said in the past before. Einar was then inner monologuing about his hate towards warriors. Then he got up and went up to Thorfinn with a mad face. Suddenly, Thorfinn had another nightmare and Einar calmed down and woke Thorfinn up. Thorfinn asked why he woke him up, and Einar just answered, "It's because we are friends." And it ended up with Thorfinn being a bit confused, and at the end Thorfinn thanked Einar, which made Einar blush, and that was it. This entire scene was only 10 pages long in the manga. The anime though takes this and flips it on its head and makes it not only longer but more dramatic and powerful. Einar actually comes up to Thorfinn and starts choking him while Thorfinn is having a nightmare. We could now see his nightmare, which wasn't in the manga, and it was, you could say, an edited compilation of previous scenes that were in season 1 with some familiar faces. This nightmare scene was made up by the studio, but it follows everything that happened canonically beforehand. In the manga, we don't get to see any of his nightmares until a bit later. After Einar stops choking our edgy blonde boy, Thorfinn screams in his sleep again and Einar wakes him up like he did in the manga. This episode was really well made and only 1.5 chapters were adapted into this, so we can see how much effort they put into this adaptation once more. In episode 5, Canute had extended flashback, which was almost a recap of season 1's ending, and I shit you not, they turned 6 pages, just mere 6 pages into 4 minutes of actual content. They somehow managed to turn Canute's recap of what he was doing until then into 4-minute long narration. The only new thing here is the scene where we got to see Canute's men building the fire signals, but that's all to the changes for this episode. Again, only 1 chapter was adapted into this episode. One Piece fans are probably dying right now seeing a single chapter being adapted into an episode that doesn't suck ass like in the One Piece anime. In the 6th episode, they changed Thorfinn's expression when Einar calls him an overgrown baby. It's not so cute anymore. That's it. Vinland Saga anime is getting cancelled. I can't take this anymore. How could they adapt an important moment of Thorfinn blushing so poorly? Also, the dialogue when Einar calls Thorfinn his friend is added in the anime at the end of the episode. Episode 7 was just 1-to-1 from manga to anime, so no changes here. They adapted Einar's spraying, but the manga did it funnier. The anime is failing us once again. Same with episode 8, no changes other than Thorfinn's nightmare, where we see Thorfinn murdering Einar and his family as a kid. In the manga, there's only the part where Thorfinn is falling down the cliff with a bunch of hands dragging him down, so no murdering Einar in the manga. Before this video ends, I wanna gladly announce that the last episode I talked about ends with chapter 69. Let's go gamers, 69. Vinland Saga anime will never peak so much after ending an episode with chapter 69. With all seriousness though, my first impression of the anime was pretty great. The opening felt more like an ending, but I guess that Vinland Saga is a seinen, so you probably won't get some high action base boosted OP, although season 1 had some of those, but the OP was still pretty dope and cool. Subscribe for more Vinland Saga content coming on my channel very soon, including more comparisons from manga to anime like this. This was only part 1 of 3. Like and share this video to support my work if you liked it, and until next time, see ya later.